From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ollie. Welcome to Monday's Richie Allen Show. What a stunning day it's been here in Manchester, although it might be just for today. Apparently, we're going to get a bit of a frost, a colder week ahead. Spring halted for the rest of the week, but it's been beautiful today. Hope you've had a good Monday. Thanks for joining me. Welcome to your Richie Allen Show.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
And I welcome back Peter Paul Parker to the programme in the second hour. Love Peter, love having him on. The Bach flower practitioner, the expert in all things non-ionising radiation and EMF and more besides. We're not going to be talking a lot about 5G today. I've done quite a bit of that lately. Going to do something a bit different with Peter later on. Tell you more on that as we go along. Before that, though, lots to talk about. It's been a very busy day. So busy that I didn't have any time to post any information about the programme on social media. Editing I was right up till 5 o'clock, one of those days. Tell me why I don't like Mondays and all of that. The programme is, of course, contactable. You can contactable me on Twitter, the usual Twitter handle. Do get in touch with me between now and the end of the programme. Yes, get rid of that. Yeah, it's been a busy old day. Had one of those days. A good day now, it must be said. But a day when it seemed there wasn't enough time in the day to do what I wanted to do. Lots of other stuff distracting me. But here we are, Monday's programme. And yes, did you have a good weekend? Did you disconnect from the lunacy of this particular system, this paradigm? I mention this every Thursday, don't I? And Sunday mornings, I often say, you've got to just disconnect. I do, you see. Once I finish on Thursday evening, I obviously have to think about guests for the following week and that sort of thing. But I do pretty much disconnect from it and forget about it and try and enjoy being with the person that whom I love, my lady, and just getting out and not thinking about it. And it's good, it's healthy. Might talk to Peter about that a little bit later on. I think there's only one major story in town today. I think you'll have been following this with great interest yourself. And that is news that the UK government plans for the UK to be the toughest place in the world for internet firms and internet sites to operate. Because sites, whether it be Facebook or Twitter, whether it be anything really, sites could be fined or blocked if they fail to tackle online harms. And online harms is in inverted commas. Online harms is the big buzz phrase of the day. Buzzwords, buzz phrase. Terrorist propaganda and child abuse are being mentioned a lot, but they're also talking about hate speech and harassment, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What's going on? Well, if you have been working all day today and not paying too much attention to this, it's the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. And it's proposed, this is Damien Collins, isn't it? It's proposed an independent watchdog that will write a code of practice for tech companies. And senior managers for tech companies could be held liable for breaches, with even a possible levy on the industry to fund the regulator. That, put simply, is they're going to get the tech industry to pay for the regulator, to pay for its own regulatory body. Will that be in the UK Ofcom, which is the Official Communications Act? Ofcom is the regulatory body for media here. Will it be Ofcom? Will it be another body? Well, we don't know yet. There have been critics of this, but they were difficult to find across the media today, it must be said. They were difficult to find, critics, but critics have been telling the BBC online service anyway, that the plans do in fact threaten freedom of speech. So this is a white paper, so it's official government policy. The Online Harms White Paper, a joint proposal from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, Mr. Collins, and the Home Office, Mr. Javid, that's Sajid Javid, who's the Home Secretary. There will be a public consultation on the plans apparently, and that will run for 12 weeks, so just under 3 months. So what's going on, dear listener? What should we know about this? What's happening? Well, the Online Harms White Paper suggests, you're listening now, get your little pencil and tick these off, suggests that there be an establishment of an independent regulator that can write a code of practice for social networks and internet companies. It suggests the regulator is given enforcement powers, including the ability to fine companies that break the rules. It suggests that additional enforcement powers, such as the ability to fine company executives, and also, and this is important, force internet service providers to block sites that break the rules. So, when this is passed, because it will be passed in the UK, forget the consultation, this will be passed, the regulator will be able to compel ISPs, internet service providers, to block sites that have been deemed to break the rules. Now, the Culture Secretary is a guy called Jeremy Wright. So it's not Collins anymore then, it's Jeremy Wright. Yes, it used to be Collins, didn't it? He said the era of self-regulation for online companies is over. Voluntary actions from industry to tackle online harms have not been applied consistently, or they haven't gone far enough, said Jeremy Wright, the Culture Secretary. Discussing these penalties with the BBC this morning, he said, if you look at the fines available to the Information Commissioner around the GDPR rules, that could be up to 4% of companies' turnover. We think we should be looking at something comparable here. Anyway, here's the Home Secretary Sajid Javid speaking about this earlier on today to an assembled media.
What really troubled me is afterwards when I spoke to the companies, and I spoke to some of them in Paris last week at the G7, is that they told me that they hadn't really sort of prepared for a live streaming event of a terrorist incident. And I found that quite shocking. Just about 6 months ago, I was talking about the live streaming of child sexual abuse, which sadly has grown and grown. And how could these companies have not thought about the live streaming of a terrorist event? And they claimed last week that's what caught them off guard. And I just find that really hard to accept, that if you were taking this responsibility seriously, why not already, as an industry, there's already a body that we've helped set up, which is the Global Internet Forum on Terrorist Content. And I've been to some of their meetings, and their job is to think about things and think ahead. And the fact they had never thought of this just tells me that there's much more work to do.
Sajid Javid there, the Home Secretary. They've talked a lot today about the online streaming of the Christchurch shooting. Keep that in mind, because I've been racking my brain about this today, dear listener of mine, and I can't understand how a child could have been easily exposed to the live stream of the Christchurch shooting. Because I've not been on Facebook now for a year, or just over a year, but as I understood it, you had to be connected to somebody. You had to be friends with somebody, or you had to be a member of a group in order to be at least easily exposed to the live stream of the shooting. I'm not saying that it is impossible for a child to have happened across the shooting in Christchurch. I'm not saying that at all. But it isn't very easy for that to happen. It would be very unlucky, wouldn't it? Help me out, it's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. But they're using the Christchurch shooting as a big example, and child sex abuse as well. So what are online harms? Because surely the government must define what online harms are and clearly define them. You'll remember when Theresa May was Home Secretary, she wouldn't define hate speech. Given the opportunity by John Humphreys on BBC Radio 4, she couldn't define what hate speech was, and she couldn't interlink that with harmful content. Now, Sajid Javid is the Home Secretary these days. He replaced Amber Rudd, didn't he? And he can't define it either. But anyway, they've given a kind of a broad definition of what online harms are. Shall we delve into it? Well, there's a range of issues. Spreading terrorist content, child sex abuse, revenge pornography, hate crimes, harassment, and the sale of illegal goods. These are bullet points under online harms. Terrorist content being spread around, child sex abuse, revenge porn, hate crimes, harassment, and the sale of illegal goods. Keep hate crimes and harassment in your mind. But according to the BBC, online harms also covers harmful behaviour that has a less clear legal definition, like cyberbullying, trolling, and the spread of fake news and disinformation. Again, I'd like you, for the purposes of this conversation, which is not one way, by the way, if you've got something to tell me, get onto Twitter and tell me. It's not one way chat. But I want to keep in mind hate crimes, harassment, cyberbullying, trolling, and the spread of fake news and disinformation. Keep those in mind, because they are going to be legally defined as online harms when this white paper, excuse me, hang on a second there, I've got a frog in my throat. Lovely. Yeah, don't bang the glass against the mic there, Richie. Keep those in mind. Right. And online harms, suicide. Anything that advocates self-harm and suicide. And everybody today is talking about a young woman called Molly Russell. A young girl, I should say. She was 14 when she committed suicide back in 2017. What a dreadful thing. When she died, her family found materials about depression and suicide on her Instagram account, and her dad still blames the social media company Instagram for her death. Right, keep that in mind as well. So the proposals, we've outlined them. The independent regulator funded by the tech industry, and there will be a definition of a code of best practice that social networks and internet companies must adhere to. So as well as Facebook, Twitter, Google, Instagram, etc., these rules would apply to messaging services like Snapchat and cloud storage services. The regulator will have the power to fine these companies and publish notices naming and shaming people who break the rules. And I already told you they're talking about blocking harmful websites, and this is going to be consulted upon for about 12 weeks. And I just want to repeat, because it bears repeating, they're not sure whether the media regulator Ofcom will be handed the responsibility for this, or whether there will be a new organisation. Right. Now, number of people today are saying that it's fairly tricky when it comes to information that isn't illegal but might still be considered harmful, right? So something posted to Facebook or Twitter that isn't illegal, right, but might be considered by others as harmful. And the example they're giving today is misinformation. And underneath misinformation, they talk about anti-vaccination. This is in the white paper. Well, it's in the outline for the white paper. And they refer to Matt Hancock, the health secretary, who's talked about the effects that anti-vaccination campaigners are having and how dangerous these people are. So will the regulator tell companies that their duty of care means that they must remove anybody who posts information critical of vaccinations? This is very important, right? Keep that in mind as well. Lots to keep in mind. This morning, the BBC tech correspondent Rory Kellan-Jones was on BBC Breakfast and was talking about these issues. Pay attention to what he says.
This has been in the works for a couple of years now, increasing pressure on the government to do something about the regulation of social media and the internet. And these are very broad aims. They're being talked about as some of the toughest regulations around the world. But here's a big cautionary note. They're out for consultation. So there's going to be another 12 weeks of people chewing them over. And there are a lot of difficult issues to be settled. Who will the regulator to be? Will it be an existing regulator like the media regulator Ofcom, or a brand new one? What exact powers will they have? There's talk of fining executives, fining the companies, but fining individual executives, and even as a last resort, getting internet service providers to block certain sites.
And to use the most recent example, if we look at what happened in the Christchurch shootings, it was about uploading content, wasn't it, to these social media sites and to technology sites, and they just couldn't police it because there was so much of it getting up there. I mean, what sort of requirement will there be on these firms to take this stuff down before it's even uploaded?
I think that's one of the key tricky issues. They talk about the various harms, and the harms with a clear legal definition, things like child sexual abuse, terrorist content, extreme violence and so on. That's pretty clear, but much less clear is things like cyberbullying, trolling, disinformation, extremist content, where it's a real matter of debate. And, you know, from the other side, people are saying, is this a license to basically crack down on free speech? Here's a great example. There's a lot of concern in the UK and around the world about campaigns against vaccination.
Yeah, mentioned vaccinations already, talked quite a bit about that in the last couple of weeks, already mentioned. How can it be illegal to question vaccine safety? How can you compel the owners of social networks to delete, warn probably a couple of times, and then ultimately ban somebody for repeatedly posting information that suggests that vaccines are dangerous? I'll give you an example. A few years back, I interviewed Alyssa Nezari. In fact, I think last week I played a clip of that interview. Alyssa's baby, her young child, was given 13 vaccinations in one day, and he died a few days later. Now, would Alyssa Nezari or her family or friends of hers, would they be warned would they be warned against speaking about that online? Would they be given a couple of warnings, and would they eventually be banned from that social network forever under this legislation that's coming in? Well, the answer is yes. How could it be illegal to go online, have a chat and say, well, I won't be vaccinating and I wouldn't recommend it because of this? Now, this is just one tiny example of what's going down here. They continue this conversation, BBC, with their tech reporter Rory Kellan-Jones.
Will the regulator say to social media platforms, you can't have that material? There'd be an outcry from the other side if they did. So a tricky line to walk and a lot still to be settled.
We've had a lot of tweets about this, Rory. Insurance Edge makes that point. They say, what's an online harm? Showing a roast dinner potato to a vegan on Twitter?
That's very good. One of the BBC Breakfast viewers tweeted in, could it be argued that an online harm is tweeting a picture of a roast dinner to a vegan? Now, tweeting a picture of a roast dinner to a vegan is just fuckery. You've obviously got very little to be doing with your day if you're winding up vegans. But you can't possibly legislate for that, can you? But yes, they can. This is the sort of thing they're talking about. Anything which is deemed to be offensive to a minority group or a vulnerable group or anybody can be legislated for, can be ordered to be removed, and the social network can be sanctioned if they fail to do it in a timely fashion. It's a great example, that, you know. It's not something I do to wind people up, but I couldn't imagine. I personally couldn't imagine being offended by something like that, number one, obviously. It goes without saying, right? But is that the sort of thing that we're going to end up with? Probably. What else does he say?
Offering an opinion on gender. Who decides all this? The thought police? Call it what it is. Censorship, plain and simple.
It is censorship.
We also had Jackie say it's not exactly targeting the root of the problem, is it? Therefore, a waste of time. And Cars, Cats and Crazy says the volume of uploads would result in sites having to close down for fear of being fined. Would that be true? Would sites want to have to close down?
I think those are extreme cases. I mean, the government will say, the regulator, it actually says in the white paper, will take a proportionate proportionate approach. So, I mean, don't forget, this covers all sorts of sites, from the giants like Facebook to tiny message boards. If you've got a football club and there's a social message board, that could come under this act, and the regulator, the government says, will take a proportionate approach.
And the big sites would say they're already investing a lot of time and money in policing content.
Yes, the big sites have traditionally spent a lot of time and money policing content. You're listening to this now and you're thinking, well, I hope you're awake, and I hope you're thinking for yourself. You're thinking, hang on a second, Facebook and Twitter have been banning people forever for saying things that have been deemed offensive or hurtful or harmful. I mean, I'm not on Facebook anymore, mostly because I could see how dangerous Facebook had become in terms of its hegemony. You know, I've spoken about that quite a bit, but I was also getting 30-day bans for nothing. And it didn't bother me because the Facebook page was worthless. I didn't care when I was banned. It meant that I didn't have to post to Facebook, which was, I saw it as a complete waste of time anyway. But I was getting banned regularly for nothing, for posting a meme, that was harmless, or equating Zionism with Nazism. And that was an extreme example, but I was often getting banned for a lot less than that, and the bans rolled up, and eventually I was banned for 3 months from posting and stuff. So it's ridiculous to think that these websites, Facebook, Twitter and others, haven't been deleting stuff and eradicating stuff and banning people since they came to be. They've been doing it forever. Keep that in mind. Sinister thing here, and it's picked up by the BBC techie Rory Cellan-Jones, is that while this looks like it's going after Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., it isn't really. It'll actually favour the big firms, and it'll screw the small firms, and it might put them out of business. And Hayden Hewitt of LiveLeak.com fame, of course, he's been talking about this for quite a while, and he's right. It'll favour the big firms. They've got nothing to worry about, really, and it'll hurt the smaller firms. Rory Cellan-Jones, briefly.
What some people fear, though, is that actually the big sites, the Facebooks, etc., will be prepared for this, will have the resources to deal with this, and this could, in some ways, make them even stronger, and the small up-and-coming sites won't have the infrastructure to deal with it.
Absolutely. They don't care because they're covered. But the smaller social sites where people go to interact, various sites, Mumsnet is not small anymore, but it's nothing compared to Facebook and others. But, and I know there is often healthy and rigorous debate about vaccines on Mumsnet, and mothers who talk about vaccines in the negative are not banned or they're not kicked out, right? But there are lots and lots of sites. There are football sites. There are chat rooms to do with every pursuit, every hobby in the world. These are in severe danger, I would have said, under this regime in this country, right? And I want to talk about cyberbullying and harassment as well. And I know this is old ground, but it's pertinent today because it's all over the news today about this white paper, online harms, cyberbullying. And when I say, by the way, that it's fairly distressful, it's fairly distressing, and it's beyond stressful for the family and friends of young girls who commit suicide because they were bullied online. And I don't want to dismiss that as something that's, something that is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. It's relevant to everybody involved. It's relevant to everybody involved. Now, a young girl who was bullied and harassed on the internet, maybe by people whom she already knew in real life, maybe people that were in her class, her school, maybe people that were in her football club or in her gymnastics club or whatever, right? I've got a huge problem with them taking an extreme example of a young girl who committed suicide because she was bullied online and saying that we're going to have to legislate for that, and we're going to have to shut down firms if they don't deal with that while it is ongoing and nip it in the bud. I've got a massive problem with that, huge problem with it, because the solution has already been provided by these major companies, and it is in the form of blocking and muting. I mean, Jesus wept, like. I mean, Jesus wept. If somebody is shouting at you or screaming at you online or calling you names, you've only got to either mute them, meaning that you will not be subjected to their silly, sick and twisted posts ever again. Right? You don't have to think about it. It's done. You've muted them or blocked them. Blocking them means that not only do you not have to see in the future what it is they are saying, that's muting, but by blocking, they don't get to see what you're saying. And this has been available on Facebook and it's been available on Twitter since day one. Blocking, muting. It's there. So it's not the responsibility of the government or a media watchdog to threaten social media sites or chat rooms or forums to shut them down or to fine them if they don't deal with this sort of thing. It's down to parents to sit down with their children and say, listen, if somebody in school is giving you a hard time and it's gone beyond name calling and stuff like that, tell me, your father, and I will deal with it. You know, I will see to it that the school puts a stop to it. And I will see to it that the parents of the other children know about it and that they are compelled to put a stop to it as well. Okay? This is how I would speak to my children. And then I would say to them, you have to be stronger. You have to have a stronger constitution because you're going to go through life. You're going to leave home, you're going to get a job, and you are going to encounter people that sometimes will make life difficult for you. You're going to have to work for people, maybe. Not just for people in terms of your supervisors and your bosses, but with people who maybe will not like you and who maybe will make life difficult for you. You're going to have to stand on your own 2 feet. When it comes to the internet, you can't get upset or cry or get depressed because some flipping moron has called you a name on Twitter. You just block them and you ignore it and you move on. Simple as that. Right? It's a big deal this today, what they're saying. Again, it's the state taking responsibility for children and for young teens, taking it away from parents, which is dangerous. It's never a good thing. It's never a productive thing. When the state says, we'll get involved, we'll compel these companies to fine people, to ban people, to delete people. Because ultimately the state doesn't really give a shit about your children being abused online. Your children, in terms of the ones being bullied online and the children who are being groomed and the children who've been abused and pictures of that abuse is online, the state doesn't care about those people. The state is using them as a prop. Okay? Bullied children and children whom were abused and that abuse was filmed and put online. Terrible thing. But the government is using those children as a prop. Doesn't care about protecting them. It's using this is the excuse to usher in this new era of, I can't find any other way to explain it, but totalitarian censorship. Terrifying stuff. Because no logical person can argue when somebody tells you, oh, we've got to do something. Children being bullied online and harassment and people being harassed and men who identify as women being harassed. We can't tolerate that. We've got to stop it. And Twitter has got to step in and delete these people. When somebody makes fun of a transgender person, Twitter has got to deal with it. If Twitter doesn't deal with it, they've got to be fined. We've got to insist that Twitter bans the person who has said to somebody, I don't believe you're really a man no matter what you say, or I don't believe you're really a woman no matter what you say. I'm not having it, or whatever. These are the props. This is about the agenda that programs like this have been talking about for years and years and years and years. Okay? The neoliberal, financial, elite-controlled agenda that's rolling out in front of our eyes day in, day out, that has become more apparent to people as time has gone on. Friends of mine going back years, Jim Mars, for example, always said, Richie, as this comes closer and closer to fruition, they won't be able to hide it anymore. At that stage, Jim Marrs used to say to me, the censorship will be overwhelming. It'll almost be overnight. Be massive. It'll come in, huge censorship, online and everywhere else. And they will take examples of things they really don't care about. Child protection. Do you think that the government of the United Kingdom is concerned with protecting children from child abuse? They couldn't give a shit. They couldn't give a shit. Because in the House of Lords and in the House of Commons today, there's probably 24 child predators known to be abusers of children. They don't care. They certainly don't care when some transgender woman or transgender man is having an argument with somebody about adjectives and about, what are my definitions and what are my buzzwords and all that nonsense. They don't care about this stuff, but they will use these examples in order to bring in this draconian policing of the internet, which I've been talking about for years and years with some very learned men and women. No need for any of this. There are block buttons. I'm regularly blocked by people who don't want to debate with me. I don't abuse them now. I don't get blocked because I'm abusive. I get blocked because they don't like what I say. People like Owen Jones and people like that just block you. It's pathetic, but it shows that it works. If you feel offended by somebody, presumably Jones was offended by me. I know he's blocked half of the listeners to this programme who are on Twitter. If he feels offended and harmed by it, he needs only block. And then he doesn't have to read anything said by me or by anybody else. There's no need for this. This agenda has been planned for years, but we got a taste of where it was going when David Cameron addressed the United Nations back in 2015 about conspiracy theories and about those who perpetuate these conspiracy theories kind of living online, and things that we don't tolerate in public spaces we have allowed fester online. If you don't remember Cameron saying this, here he is in 2015.
To defeat ISIL and organisations like it, we must defeat this ideology in all its forms. As evidence emerges about the backgrounds of those convicted of terrorist offences, it is clear that many of them were initially influenced by preachers who claim not to encourage violence, but whose worldview can be used as a justification for it. We know this worldview, the peddling of lies, that 9/11 was somehow a Jewish plot, or that the 7/7 London attacks were staged. The idea that Muslims are persecuted all over the world as a deliberate act of Western policy. The concept of an inevitable clash of civilizations. We must be clear. To defeat the ideology of extremism, we need to deal with all forms of extremism, not just violent extremism. Of course, some will argue that this is not compatible with free speech and intellectual inquiry. But I ask you, would we sit back and allow right-wing extremists, Nazis or Ku Klux Klansmen to recruit on our university campuses? No. So we shouldn't stand by and just allow any form of non-violent extremism. We need to argue that prophecies of a global war of religion, pitting Muslims against the rest of the world, these things are nonsense. We need Muslims and their governments around the world to reclaim their religion from these sick terrorists, as so many are doing and quite rightly doing today. We all need help, and to help them with programs that channel young people away from these poisonous ideologues. And we need the strongest possible international focus on tackling this ideology, which is why here at the United Nations, the United Kingdom is calling for a new special representative on extremism.
Yeah. Before that, he spent about 5 minutes speaking about the internet. And here's a related story today that probably escaped the attention of most people. But listening to all this talk today of a white paper about online harms, it was fascinating to read that story about the British woman who might go to prison in Dubai over an insult on Facebook. You've probably come across this, but I know some of you who've been working all day long won't have seen this. This is a British woman who called her ex-husband's new wife a horse on Facebook 2 years ago. 2 years ago. She made 2 Facebook comments back in 2016 about the woman her husband had married, right? She'd split up with her husband and he'd later remarried. She was upset. She's from London. Lale Sharavesh, that's right. Layla, could be Layla. It is Layla Sharavesh. She was arrested then at a Dubai airport after flying there to attend her former husband's funeral. So he died later on, this guy, after remarrying. Obviously, she wanted to be at the funeral. She arrived in Dubai and she was arrested for the Facebook postings that she made 2 years ago. Right? You couldn't make this stuff up. One of the comments said, "I hope you go under the ground, you idiot. Damn you, you left me for this horse." So she was having a go at her ex-husband. She was obviously emotional. "I hope you go under the ground. Damn you, you left me for this horse." Fair enough, right? Okay. Under the United Arab Emirates cybercrime laws, a person can be jailed or fined for making defamatory statements on social media. She's detained in Dubai at the moment, and campaigners are saying she could get 2 years in jail or fined up to £50,000. Now, apparently, the woman, her ex-husband remarried, who made the complaint, apparently she's withdrawn the complaint in the meantime. But it bears mentioning that today, because that's probably where we're going to end up. Listen to Raja Sterling. She founded a group called Detained in Dubai. She spent time in a prison in Dubai herself. Have a listen. She's more annoyed with the Foreign Office than Dubai itself for jailing people. She's annoyed with the Foreign Office for not keeping people informed when they travel to Dubai that you could get into trouble for previous social media posts.
People can be arrested for making a social media post years ago outside the jurisdiction of the UAE and in the country where they reside, and it's not a crime. No British national that I know would ever think that, having made that comment on social media 2 years ago, that they would face any sort of detention in Dubai. And I think that's really where the FCO has let the British public down.
The Foreign and Commonwealth Office, she's more annoyed with them for not telling people, listen, you're going to a lunatic asylum. You're travelling to the United Arab Emirates there. Make sure you have a good trolling of your social media and delete anything that might have been, I don't know, defamatory about a citizen of the UAE, or even defamatory or critical of the UAE itself. Human rights lawyer David Haig was jailed in Dubai for 5 months for alleged Twitter abuse. He spoke to Sky News today. This is interesting.
In my own case, I was there for 5 months for a similar thing, Twitter abuse, until I was finally acquitted of that. And like you said, it's about educating ourselves. If we have any, you don't even need to travel or live in Dubai. You know, if you're going to be transiting through Dubai and you make a small tweet or something on your social media years ago, a football fan that mentioned something about Emirates that someone doesn't like when you travel through one of the airports, you can get arrested and jailed. And the Foreign Office really needs to actually now start educating all the tourists that go there and show the real dangers.
Yeah, and I just wonder, in the light of this statement from the new wife, she's saying that she's willing to withdraw her complaint for the benefit of her husband's daughter. Legally, with your knowledge of the legal system, what does that mean?
Usually that's enough. Yeah, you have different types of crime there, and this is seen as somewhat of a personal one. So if the person that's affected by it withdraws the complaint, then normally, unless there's a reason for a public interest to carry on, that they would let that go. Now that's the usual way. But of course, I mean, in any event, you know, should people be putting people in prison, other citizens, for a tweet?
No. Should people be going to prison for a tweet? No. You might think, oh, it's incredible to make that leap. These are very austere, very draconian places anyway. Yeah. But look at the language they're using today in the UK about online harms. You know, it's not a great stretch of the imagination to think that this is the road we're going down here. David Haig there, who spent 5 months in a prison in Dubai for a tweet. Would you believe it? Phil Restino, how you doing, Phil? Old pal of mine. Phil is in Florida, and he tweeted this to me. Let me get it there. Richie, just how the false flag attack of 9/11 was used to justify the perpetual global 9/11 wars and totalitarian draconian police state and the removal of our liberties. Problem, reaction, solution. Hey, says Phil, yes, that's the analogy to draw. While they're saying we need online harms, we need to legislate for online harms to protect vulnerable children from bullying and for sexual abuse, and to stop terrorist groups grooming people. They don't care about these things. Child abuse and child murder is rampant in the establishment. Rampant. Rife. It's common. We know this. Right? And as for protecting people from terrorism, the biggest terrorists in the world are the governments of Israel, the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. Biggest terrorists on planet Earth. Look at Libya. In the news again over the last few days. Chaos there. The CIA-backed general planning to march on Libya. Madness. Where did that come from? It came from this government, France, the United States, and the no-fly zone, and the madness and the lies about Libya. Right, I'm segueing away. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. And that's what's happening. Coming here. So David Haig says, madness to think you could be jailed for a tweet. It's coming here. It's inevitable. This is the Richie Allen Show for Monday, the 8th of April 2019. I think we'll take a musical break, will we? I think so. Let's have some specials. I need a break. And it's beautifully sunny outside the studio. And this is a beautifully sunny song. This is a message to you, Rudy, on your Richie Allen Show. Stick around. Peter Paul Parker coming up in a few minutes' time. More after this, though.
Stop your messing around.
The specials and Rudy. My mate Rog has just had a look at the stream. We've got listeners from 86 countries listening live to the Richie Allen Show. That's nice, that, isn't it? 86 countries, eh? Not too shabby for a Monday. The time is 12 minutes to 6. That's the size of it. That's the size of it. All of this smoke and mirrors about protecting children and protecting people from harassment is a nonsense. This is about protecting the establishment, because more and more people have been exposed through access to the internet to the agenda, the multifaceted agenda, geoengineering, the vaccination agenda, the depopulation agenda, the forced migration agenda by destroying countries, sacking countries like Libya, the aforementioned, and others, creating desperate situation for those people. The refugee crisis, all manufactured to serve an end. And the establishment, you know, at the very tip of the pyramid, where the decisions are made, they're well aware that people are waking up to it. So, eons ago, forget this nonsense about Tim Berners-Lee inventing the internet. Nonsense. The internet was created not to be a great gift to mankind, but as a way of ultimately getting people into one place where people could be corralled, kettled, and then you could decide what they did see and what they didn't see. Now, admittedly, the tip of the pyramid knew that it was going to be problematic, that at least in the early days, a lot of people were going to see this information, or a lot of people were going to talk. It wasn't so easy to police it early on. But they have people where they want people now. Now is when they double down on the censorship. And it's happening as it was predicted, not just by Jim Marrs, but by others who've been on this programme over the years. And again, I don't think you had to be an intelligent conspiracy researcher to see where this was eventually going to end up. But here we are now. And this particular presenter is very worried about it in terms of the future of this programme. And I don't mean financial future. I'm not talking about money now and support. I'm talking about the ability to do it. You know, because what they're ultimately talking about, if you read between the lines, is the likes of the Richie Allen Show. This is what they're talking about. We're going to have to get that off the air. And the legislation they're proposing will make it exceedingly easier for them to do that by basically telling internet service providers, don't carry the Richie Allen Show. Telling YouTube, not that I care about YouTube, delete the Richie Allen Show. Telling my podcast hosts, Podomatic and iTunes and Spotify, get rid of the Richie Allen Show. That's how simple it's going to be. Telling the companies that stream the programme live, get rid of the Richie Allen Show. And then, at that point, it's game over. Forget the financial support. It won't matter a damn then if we don't stand up to it some way. How do we stand up to it? I don't know. I wish I knew. I'd love to be sitting here on a Monday with the answer. How do we stand up to that? I don't control these companies. And it doesn't matter even whether it's a Conservative government or whether it's a Labour government or whether it's a mixture of governments, of parties, a coalition. This is a cross-party supported thing. They all support this. And it will lead, in the end, to the death of programmes like this. Go to Europe then, Richie. It's worse than Europe. Because the European Union is putting these plans into place as well. That's the way it's going anyway. 8.5 minutes to the top of the hour. I don't want you to be all depressed about it. It's just the way it is. So what's happening with Brexit then? We will be speaking with Peter Paul Parker shortly. Love Peter, can't wait to catch up with him again. What's happening with Brexit? Well, Theresa May has been speaking with Labour Party people over a way forward. That's been going on, we know that. She's going to go to Berlin and Paris tomorrow, apparently, to meet with Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron ahead of this summit in Brussels on Wednesday. She's going to go to Brussels on Wednesday and beg for a second extension to Article 50. Right? She apparently wants to extend it till the end of June, but the European Union want her to extend it for a year. Right? So these talks are going to happen on Wednesday. Extend. This will probably mean that candidates will be put up by the political parties of this country for European Union elections. If you listened to Sunday View yesterday, talked about this at length. Humiliating for the country, that's not even the half of it, right? That's what's been going on. Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, has been meeting with Theresa May's team, and he said that May's team hasn't changed its position on her existing plan. It seems that Theresa May and her band of negotiators meeting with Labour, it seems that May and her team are reluctant to agree to Labour's demand that the UK stays in some sort of customs union. So it's all over the place. In the meantime, the 1922 committee, apparently, look it up, I don't want to be explaining this stuff to you over and over again, are meeting today. Mark Francois, a Tory Brexiteer, hasn't given up on the idea of getting rid of Theresa May, even though the no confidence motion in May failed earlier this year and party rules dictate that they've got to wait another 12 months. But anyway, Mark Francois thinks they might be able to get rid of Theresa May.
Well, I think there are very many MPs across the party, by no means just Brexiteers, who are extremely concerned that the Prime Minister is now considering doing a deal with a Marxist. If we'd known that when we had the confidence vote back before Christmas, I'm sure very many more colleagues would have voted again. So now that the situation has clearly changed and we're threatened with a customs union completely against our own manifesto, I'm arguing that colleagues should be given a chance to test their confidence in the Prime Minister again.
We'll watch that one and see does it develop. Stephen Doughty is a Labour MP. He spoke to the BBC and he told them that Labour's negotiators are telling Theresa May that whatever they decide between them, that's Labour and the Tories, must be put to the people. This is apparently a Labour Party red line in this negotiation with Theresa May. They're saying whatever we decide, folks, it's got to go to the people in a second referendum. You can check out anytime you like.
Well, I think it's very important that there are talks going on. I think that's the crucial thing before the council. If we'd have been in some sort of limbo situation, that wouldn't have been good for anybody. But there are talks going on. It's early days yet. I've spoken to some of those involved in those talks, and it's very clear what Labour is expecting out of those talks, but it may be some days yet before we get an answer.
Do you think there's any prospect of there being white smoke from Downing Street or, I don't know, from the Leader of the Opposition's office before Wednesday?
I wouldn't expect anything today, but certainly over the next few days, and I think that's clearly why we're going to need a longer extension, because regardless of what comes out of those talks or what comes out of any future indicative votes that the government or anybody else organises, there needs to be time to enable that to go forward. And so I'm hopeful that other European leaders will make that space for us to come to conclusions. Let's not forget, the government's had 2 years and didn't reach out during that time. These talks have only been going on for a matter of days, so it's important they've got time to be able to conclude hopefully positively.
You're a supporter of another referendum. What message are you and your colleagues giving to Jeremy Corbyn over any Brexit deal he could agree with the PM?
Well, I was pleased to join the signing of a letter along with many of my colleagues just the other day from all parts of the party, all different backgrounds, saying that we expect a confirmatory vote to be part of those talks. That's certainly the message we've had from Jeremy, it's certainly the message we've had from Keir Starmer and others involved in the talks, and that will be a crucial red line for many of us. We can agree a deal, but it's crucial that goes back to the people.
Goes back to the people. I got a phone call from a local Irish newspaper this morning to ask me, of all people, for a comment on what's been happening. I don't know if they'll use my quote. I think they probably won't. But I'm happy to oblige my media brethren and sistren in Ireland with a quote from time to time. I was asked by somebody this morning, Richie, what would you like to see happen if there are European elections in the UK in May? And I said with my tongue in cheek, what I would like to see happen is I would like to see the Palace of Westminster and Downing Street burned to the ground. Now, why did I say tongue in cheek? Because I don't mean that. I wouldn't want to see anything burned, and I wouldn't be urging or advocating that people do that. But that's the sort of anger that, you know, when somebody says that, what would you like to see happen? You start to grit your teeth and you start to swear. So I wouldn't like to see anything burned to the ground. But I'd like to see people finally get up off their arses and say, right, from today begins a new era of non-compliance. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see people come together in their neighbourhoods, on their streets, in their estates, and say, look, why don't we just say, enough's enough now. No more payment of council tax, no more BBC television licence payment, no more anything until, you know, you start acting like a government of the people, by the people and for the people. I'd love to see that. Massive non-compliance and civil disobedience, not violence. Leave the violence to the thugs, you know, the very people we're talking about. Michel Barnier was in Dublin today meeting with the ridiculous Leo Varadkar, the most ludicrous man to ever to ever hold the office of Taoiseach in Ireland. Ridiculous. Preparation for the second referendum is underway. Preparation for the European elections is underway, says Leo, the Kylie Minogue fan. Yeah. It's a stitch up. A group of Remainers and pro-European Union businessmen and women have formed a new group called Let Us Vote. What are they campaigning for? Let Us Vote. Well, they're campaigning for every resident of the UK to have a vote, regardless of where you hail from. So it doesn't matter where you come from. This group, which is pro-European Union, has loads of money in it, this new group, wants to campaign for a change in the law so that everybody in the country votes regardless of where they originated. Constitutional lawyer Nigel Toft loves the idea. If you pay tax, you should vote, says Nigel. Kind of hard to disagree with him. Have a listen.
Well, I'd start from the time-honoured concept that there should be no taxation without representation. I mean, it was an idea that first came up in the American Revolution. It was the fact that the British Crown wanted to tax people living in the American colonies and granting them no representation, and that led to that problem. Times haven't changed. I think if people are living here and are resident, we're not talking about people who are just coming for holiday, people who are resident here, therefore paying taxes, and even if not income tax, then taxes in the form of VAT, they should have a say in how their money is spent, surely. And I also think that we're all in favour of democracy. I thought the problem really was that not enough people voted. I think it's very sad when one sees the number of people that vote in elections, how many people do not bother to vote. So why we should try and stop people resident here from participating in our society, I really cannot imagine.
Yeah, if you live here and you pay taxes, he makes a good point, right? It might stick in your craw that, because you know where this is going, obviously, right? This is a Remain-led attempt, of course, right? A Remain-led attempt to get more and more Remainers registered to vote, obviously. But Nigel Toft says, if you pay taxes here, and you're resident here, why not? Unsurprisingly, UKIP immigration spokesman and the General Secretary of the party, Paul Oakley, is horrified.
In fact, we would get rid of the concept of European citizens having the right to stand and vote in EU elections in their country of residence. It's appalling that the elections in the United Kingdom have been tainted by people who are pro-EU. But it never stops. I wasn't aware of this campaign before. We knew that the Remain side would fight a dirty referendum, which they did. It didn't stop after that. We had the Gina Miller court case, the push for a loser's vote, and then, of course, we've got a parliament which is dominated by Remain MPs. So this campaign is supposed to be neutral. It's nothing of the sort. It's got 6 MPs backing it at the moment, including David Lammy, who is not exactly known for being neutral on the issue of Brexit. And one of the campaign groups which is backing this is called Another Europe is Possible, which is opposed to the softest possible Brexit. They want a second referendum. Now, it's really not difficult to work out. These people are wolves in wolves' clothing. They want to betray Brexit, and UKIP certainly will do all that it can to stop them.
Love that. They're wolves in wolves' clothing. Right. Of course, UKIP is being destroyed by its association with Stephen Yaxley Lennon, isn't it? Or Tommy Robinson. For the foreseeable future, and by that I mean for the next few days, let me just remind some of my snowflakes, because there are quite a few in my audience. I am, and always will be against the censorship of everybody, no matter what they say. I spoke out very strongly against PayPal deciding to stop processing payments from Robinson supporters. I spoke out against that. I spoke out very strongly against Google and, of course, Google's offshoot at YouTube banning Robinson and restricting his channel. Totally against it. 100%. And always will be. Okay? You can't just decide, you can't be a free speech advocate for those that you agree with or for those whom you like. It's got to be for everybody or nobody. Simple as that. And that's not to patronise these guys, Robinson or whatever. It's not to patronise them and to giggle and to wink and to nudge. Not at all. Let them say whatever they say. Let them have access to their YouTube channels and everything else. Nobody should have the right to deny them. And I will always say that. But on the Robinson thing, I think it's very funny. I think the establishment is properly doubling down on what's happened in this country in terms of Brexit. Doubling right down and taking no chances whatsoever. You know, Farage, whatever anybody thinks of him, whatever anybody thinks he is, whatever anybody thinks about his free market capitalist plans, what he would do if it ever came to be that somebody like him was in power. And I've never denied that. Again, I've said it 1,000 times. I don't think that we'd be any better off under Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson and people like Nigel Farage. Of course not. I'm not stupid. But Farage is very charismatic. And he made a very powerful and compelling argument against the European Union, regardless of what you think about him. So his party has been undermined by its association with Tommy Robinson. And the party now becomes very unpalatable to the more moderate, everyday, easygoing United Kingdom citizen. It's incredible. The system, you see the tentacles, wherever you look. Anyway, we're coming up for 5 minutes past the hour. That's enough of the news roundup today. There was a Rachel Riley story. She co-presents Countdown on Channel 4. That was about anti-Semitism. Let's leave that. There was a racism story. Let's leave that as well. By the way, massive credit goes to Raheem Sterling, the Manchester City and England forward. Not only is he a fairly gifted football player, the boy, but he's also got some sense of perspective on this whole racism thing. And it was good to see Raheem Sterling say today, I don't agree with the notion that football players should walk off the pitch if they hear or suspect that they are hearing abuse or booing or monkey chanting coming from a few morons in a football crowd. I don't think that's the answer, said Sterling. And I like that. Good man. You're no victim. You're an intelligent, smart, articulate, brilliant athlete. You couldn't be the victim of some fat, pot-bellied, bald, fucking drunk moron in a crowd who makes a monkey noise. How could you be a victim to somebody like that, to that sweaty bastard? So by saying, I'm not walking off the pitch for that goon, let the people around him deal with him. I like that. Don't be a victim. Get on with the game. Right? Nice to hear that today. Good stuff. Right, we're going to get Peter Paul Parker on the programme now. Would love to hear your thoughts, by the way, when I'm chatting with Peter. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. If you don't know, and there are new listeners joining the programme all the time, so it's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Please get in touch with the show. Lots of great guests coming up through the rest of the course of the week. I'll tell you more about that in a timely fashion, probably before the end of the programme. Let's welcome Peter Paul Parker back then. Let me dial him up there and get him on. He's an amazing guy, Peter. He's a Bach flower practitioner, and as I've said before, he's an expert in all things non-ionising radiation and EMF. I was very impressed with him several years ago when he spearheaded a campaign to try and make schools aware of the dangers of Wi-Fi and mobile phone technology and the radiation. That's how we first met. He's been on the programme recently, and when we concluded our last conversation, I was very keen to ask him back on again to talk about solutions, because in our last conversation the notion of our body chakras came up, and Peter said he would come back on the programme to talk about the neurons in our body, in our gut and in our nervous system, and how we can consciously interact with our own bodies to live a heart-based life, and by doing that to fight back against these external assaults on our body. He's a top man. I love having him on the programme. Let's welcome back Peter Paul Parker to the show. Hey Peter, thanks for coming back. Sorry about last week. We were due to do this last week, but here we are now today anyway. Welcome back, my friend. How have you been since we last spoke?
I've been absolutely amazing. Thanks for asking. Yeah, really good. I'm sort of growing all the time. It's an interesting journey. And yeah, how are you? I'm sorry to hear about the Monday Archon attack or whatever it was.
There was some crazy stuff last week. Yeah, it was just a router thing really that knocked me off. I was able to do a very brief YouTube stream to the listeners, but not an audio and a video one. But I didn't have anything set up whereby I could do an interview, so I couldn't have gotten you on that way. But anyway, I'm glad, because radio is more important. I had a great conversation with the future Mrs. Allen last night about radio. We were listening to Queen and Radio Gaga. People hear Radio Gaga and they don't understand how powerful a song it is. how political it is, and how it talks about the importance of radio and about listening, and how we listen. We get more from a radio interview than we ever do from watching a video interview. And people don't understand that, because we listen harder. Our palms get very sweaty. We perspire with the effort of listening. And in fact, Peter, we actually take more in than we would do if you and I were sitting on television now. And I know you know all that sort of stuff anyway, but a lot of our listeners might not be aware of that. That's why radio and internet radio is very important. We engage more with the content. Hey, speaking of looking well, listeners, go to Google Peter Paul Parker. This man positively glows. And the reason, no, listen, I'm not taking a piss. The reason
I know.
You look fantastic. And the reason I say this is because you practice what it is you preach. You know, your energy. And you've worked with sound-based healing in the past. You've done it all. I know this, Peter. You look magnificent, mate. Your skin positively glows. And that's why I'm happy to be talking about these solutions. First of all, let's just take that line that I said by way of introduction. We're being assaulted from all angles. It's not just EMF. It's crap food. It's water. It's everything. The body is under assault 24/7. Talk about that.
Well, let's quickly go to the music. You were talking about music. So with our mind, if you look at our mind, how the ancients showed our mind, we had the eye of Horus. Everyone goes, oh, it's the all-seeing eye, it's the evil eye. Actually, that eye is made up of 6 hieroglyphs, the 5 senses, but the 6th hieroglyph is actually the mind. So they understood that the mind was just as important as the 5 senses to understand this physical reality that we live in. So with the music, and one of the reasons I moved away from the music business is because they're pumping us full of negative thoughts in our head. These songs that go round and round in our heads, we're not sure of what the lyrics are with some of the songs, and they have like very dark occult messages. So you're walking around making these occult messages in your head subconsciously and not even realizing it, and going along with the meme that we're living in, because you don't realize it. You don't realize how heavy the mind control is actually upon human beings. So when you actually start to break away from that and be a bit more discerning about who you listen to, say like Queen, for instance, if you listen to some of their lyrics like Hammer to Fall,
brilliant.
It's amazing stuff. And Freddie Mercury was way up on this, and that's why they killed him off with AZT. If you think about how the AIDS thing came up, and what they're doing is scaring the living daylights out of everybody and then selling them AZT, which was a failed chemotherapy drug. So obviously these people who could afford it, because they said it was expensive, they were taking it. And people like Kenny Everett and Freddie Mercury died because of this. I don't believe they died of... They died of immune deficiency, definitely, but that's what AZT does. It breaks down your immune system. So it's that music, you've got to be discerning of what you listen to. Well, you've got to be discerning about everything now. This is such a full, brutal attack on the human senses.
This is interesting about Mercury. You think, because you mentioned Hammer to Fall, which is, again, it's uncanny, Peter, because Caroline and myself were listening to, we actually watched the Wembley live thing, which you could watch a million times and never get bored of it, when they played Wembley in 86. Yeah, and we were listening to Hammer to Fall, and Brian May's roadie comes out to play rhythm guitar during the song, and Freddie's going bananas, and we're listening to the lyrics of it, and it's about breaking free from the constraints and the chains of society and oppressive thinking and war and misery. It's amazing. And you think that Freddie was on some sort of higher plane, and that somewhere within the system something didn't like him and wanted to get rid of him. I say something, not someone.
A mixture of both, yeah. You think about the people who got around him eventually, and they lured him off with drugs and all sorts of sexual perversions, and he was such an open spirit that he went along with it. And then he realised that he'd been dragged away from his mates. He called the band Queen his family, and he'd realised that he was actually out on his own. And that's when he came back to do the Live Aid gig, and then all of a sudden, months later, he's dead, or a year later or so, he's dead, and he just died. And yeah, I believe that I think so many people are actually onto this now, especially in the music business, who are looking at it and going, everyone I speak to anyway, they look at it, my goodness me, yeah, you're dead right. And we don't know what it is. I mean, it could be David Icke's thing of like reptilians, or it could be just a biofeedback that we're feeding into this matrix. Because if we feed in negative energy into this matrix, that negative energy will come back at you, and it comes back at you tenfold. And I realized as I've been detaching myself from this matrix, that when I take big steps about understanding more of the nature of our reality, the harder it comes back at me. And I feel like my life is falling apart and everything's going to bits and pieces. But what that actually is my preconditioning and my preconceptions of life actually breaking down, and I'm actually emerging as a stronger spirit, as a stronger human being. It's really important to understand that when it's all falling apart, it usually means you're making a bigger step towards your true self, your consciousness, what's inside of you. Because everything that we've been taught is virtually a lie, virtually everything we've been taught. And there's one thing that really struck me, which I've never heard anyone actually talk about, but when you take the cross, for instance, the cross where you're the center of that cross could mean many things, 4 seasons, many different things. So what the Catholic religion did, or the Holy Roman Empire, and I'm not knocking Christians, if you believe in the word of Jesus, I think Jesus was an amazing guy. They pulled up the center of that cross so it's not quite a perfect cross, so you can't make the circle. And what they've done with Jesus, if you take a look at Jesus, they put a crown of thorns on his top chakra, on his 7th chakra, i.e. you're not going to have any interaction with your divinity, which is inside all of us. And then you've got the 4 points on the hands and the feet. These are called acupressure points. And these are very, very important points to bring energy into the body. So what's happened? They put 4 nails through those acupressure points. And then what's happened is they put a spear through what we call, in my practice, called the danjian, or the dantian in Chinese, which is your energy center of the body. So they're stabbing out your energy to do anything about what they're doing to you. And they're leaving the heart open. So if the heart turns on itself as a chakra, you become either a narcissist or a sociopath. And how many of them are you seeing in our society today? And how many of them are at the top of our society?
Enough.
So
enough
all the way
yeah.
from this whole thing has been going on for thousands of years. And what happened, they wrote down everything in the Bible. The apocalypse doesn't mean the big destruction of humanity. It means the unveiling. So what's happening is all being unveiled. Everything, all this stuff from the mystery schools, which is fascinating to get into, is all being unveiled, and it's up to people to whether they're going to listen to it or not. Because to me, I've listened to it and I feel absolutely amazing, almost invincible. And I know that it's just not going to happen. When you wake up and you push it away from you, it's just not going to happen to you. But we need to do this en masse. People need to get off their backsides and actually do something. Because if you just sit there thinking or intellectualizing it, you're using your intellect, you're cutting. So if you keep cutting, eventually there'll be nothing left. But if actually you use your intelligence and your 3 brains, which is your heart, your stomach or your gut and your main brain, you will start to pick up on what you need to do as a human being to try and get around this. There's many little things that I can get into.
Loads of questions, by the way, on Twitter.
Physical letters. Good.
Yeah, there always is. Peter Paul Parker is our guest. peterpaulparker.wordpress.com. Peter, did the cross originate from paganism or astrological symbolism? I'm very fascinated by what you said there, because it's very occult sounding. That, it almost sounds very deliberate. This imagery of the nailing of the hands, the thorn, the crown of thorns on the head, and the spear. It's almost like a message of some sort. What about paganism and astrological symbolism? In terms of the cross.
Paganism is our ancient system. Paganism just basically means you're into nature, and that has all been twisted. And you've got these lunatics who stand up and say, I'm a pagan, blah, blah, blah. Paganism is basically you're into nature, which is what we all should be. We are all part of nature. Our gut, for instance, is the same. If you've got healthy soil and a healthy gut, you've got the same bacteria in both. Exactly the same. It's the same makeup. They're both little ecosystems in themselves. And they're not just what you are or what the soil is. They're actually living entities inside of us and inside the soil. So paganism was a respect for nature. And again, it's all been twisted and all been turned around by people who don't want you to believe in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because it's a negative word, isn't it? I mean, I would have grown up believing that pagan was a negative word. In fact, growing up as a Catholic boy, it was often said to me in jest by a friendly uncle who would laugh and say, go away, you're only a pagan, you know, if I did something naughty or something like that. So it was negative, a negative word, pagan. A pagan is an unbeliever. A pagan is nothing. A pagan is somebody without any spirit or any spirituality. That's what I would have been taught.
Yeah, and the word heretic.
Yes.
Heretic's a wonderful word. Is that like you're questioning? All you're doing is questioning. So we should be questioning everything that comes into our brain. We should be questioning it, and nobody seems to be. Well, more people are now, but when I was starting to wake up, I realised that nobody was questioning anything. I remember seeing many years ago on the television there was this dude with a white lab coat on, and he had a green board with chalk on it, and he was explaining the bullet that killed Kennedy. And I don't know how old I was about 7 or 8, and I was looking at this, and I was looking at my brothers who were sitting there watching the TV. I thought to myself, is anybody actually believing this rubbish? Does anybody actually believe in this bullet kind of bounced off a few things and then blew the top of his head off? I thought then and there, this is madness. This is madness. So I've had the ability to question many things from a very early age. And I was conditioned into the Catholic Church as well. And I kept putting my hands up during science and mainly physics. I put my hand up and say, is this a fact or is this a theory? And they got so fed up with my questions, they kicked me out of the physics class because
they couldn't answer you.
Yeah, they couldn't know. And I was interested in biology, and it didn't really go deep enough into the body for me, because there's this thing, we're biological entities, but there's this thing that triggers this all off, which is our energy. And we call it in the West life force energy, but in the East they call it ki or chi or India prana. And it's more important, as far as I'm concerned.
What is it then?
Physical body.
Peter, listen, you have no idea how much I love this, how much I love having you on. This is, I love it, Peter, I really do. So I'm gonna stop you when you mention these terms, because you're gonna have to explain them. Before you tell me what chi is, let me just point out that not only will there be listeners, some listeners, not many, but there will be some who will be saying this, but I know that doctors and nurses and scientists, they say people like Peter Paul Parker and everybody else that talks about chakras and chi, it's a load of old balls. It's nonsense. It's all this old crap. You know, we know what the body is. We know how the body works. They always say that. They never want to talk about any of this stuff. So I'm just pointing out that they are there, and they will be amongst this audience, and they'll want me to say, look, I don't buy any of this stuff. We have lungs, we have kidneys, we have a bloodstream that flows through the body, we have a brain. That's it. We die, 80 years, 100 if you're lucky. Bob's your uncle. That's just the way it is. And I'm fed up of all these mystics like Peter Paul Parker. That's what some people will say. I'm not saying that. Now, what is chi? What is this mysterious energy, chi? What is it?
It's in the practice I do, it's called they call it life particles. Basically, it's just particles of light or energy. It's just energy, and it's in everything. And it can be. You can do meditations now. I was the same. I was very, very skeptical when I first got into this. I think it was David Icke I saw many years ago. He's saying, look into the silence. So I started looking into meditation. I found this practice who do energy meditations. And I've been doing it now 5 or 6 years. I've become a master at it. And now I can feel energy in between my palms. I can feel my chakras coming out, which is why I'm so confident about talking about them, because I can feel it in my hands. It's not my brain playing tricks on me. It's you having to shut down the 5 senses to feel the energy.
Yeah.
And it's a universal energy that it's in everything. It's in every object. This is just a vibrating field of atoms, and they can. What's happening now? They can manipulate those atoms. Well, actually, it's the protons inside the atoms. They can manipulate them to whichever way they want, unless you're aware of it's happening to you. So that's why you've got to keep. It's the journey inside, not the journey outside. So you need to go inside to yourself and find your true essence inside of you.
No, I don't mean to be glib at all. I certainly do not mean to be glib. Did George Lucas and people like that, did they understand that? Is that what he was getting at with the force in the films? The all-binding energy field that interacts with us and it's around us. It's inside us, it's outside us. Is that what he meant by that?
without a doubt. Without a doubt, they all right. You look at the Matrix is all about that as well. The energy field that you can tap into. When Keanu Reeves, I think it's the third one, when he loses his eyes and he's just focusing on the energy field. He sees the energy field rather than using his physical eyes. That's why when you walk into a room, it must have happened to everybody. You walk into a room and you either take a complete dislike to somebody, probably like someone like Tony Blair, or you'll find a resonance with somebody else, and you actually, before you start talking to them, you'll like them, and then when you have a conversation, you'll say to them at the end of the conversation, I feel like I've known you for all my life.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
That's an energy, that's a deeper energy transfer. It's not about what we feel. It's physically, on a physical side, it's an energetic feeling, and you can feel people's energy when you shut down your five senses. You can feel people's energy bodies around. You can feel the energy body around people's bodies. I did it with my wife when she had bad knees. I can feel the aura around her, and where the problem is with the knees, you can feel gaps in the energy. It's weird.
And you
really
feel,
weird.
and this is amazing to me now. So your wife had dodgy knees. I sympathise. I've got one dodgy knee, and you can actually get a sense. Now, do you know, this is great, Peter. 10 years ago, I would have politely snored my way through the interview, right? Pretended to be talking to you, and I would have been doing me nails or checking the football results. But you've got me now, and you've always had me, I'll tell you why. When we lived in London at the television thing, when I first met you, anybody who knows David Icke will know that David's been crippled with rheumatoid arthritis for years.
Yeah.
It ended his goalkeeping career. He was an excellent goalkeeper, very big, very agile guy, and the hands went very bad. And Jazz, our dog, our German Shepherd dog, who doesn't like very many people, but she's very quiet, she's not aggressive at all, she's very nervous, liked David and spent an awful lot of time at his hands. And I used to tell her, get away from his hands, Jazz, leave him alone. And Ike used to go, leave her alone, Richie. She's not disturbed by, but very curious by the bad energy there, or the negative energy around the hands. And it just clicked with me then. I knew what was going on. And he said, she can see things that we can't see. And she sees what's going on with my hands, Peter.
Yeah.
Wow, it blew me away at the time. And he was right, because I've got problems with my hands and my knee, and she's always at my knee as well. Amazing.
Wow.
And you can get this. How do you get it? Do you tingle yourself? What happens? How do you sense this when your wife might be particularly sore on any given day? How do you feel it?
Well, I'm personally, I'm not that sensitive to that energy. I can feel it, but I'm not that good an energy healer. But to me, there's aspects of healing like that as well, which is why I've never really deeply got into it, because it's aspects of your actions. Because as a sound healer or even an energy healer, I've had people come to me and you get them and they walk out, they're floating out the door, they look 10 years younger, they look amazing. A week later, they come back because they've done the same circle of their life, which is causing all the issues that they're getting, and they come back and therefore they're becoming dependent on me. I don't want anybody to be dependent on me, and I don't want to be dependent on anybody else. I want to work with people. So for me to go into that energy healing, I'm more interested now in getting rid of the negative vibrations inside of people, which usually causes the ailment. So I'm looking, rather than like the allopathic medicine that we are also keen to get the magic pill that fixes this, I'm more interested at the causes. Why is this causing? Why are you getting causal problems in your body? And it's all to do with us not releasing negative thoughts and negative energy. It's as simple as that. And you got to keep this very simple, otherwise it starts to get very wishy-washy and very new agey, because it's not.
It's controversial. It's controversial. I'm just going to make the point, and then I'm going to shut up and get out of your way, because it's controversial. Because I've heard doctors say before that they don't like this notion that, you know, people are encouraged to think that it's their own negativity and their own bad thoughts and bad feelings that is making them unwell. Now, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I think Peter is more than onto something here. I'm inclined to go along with this. they certainly don't treat the causes of problems in conventional medicine. They certainly do not. They treat symptoms, and ultimately it never goes away. But I'm just going to put it out there. There are people who think, again, this is hokey-cokey stuff and all of that, but I've had my own personal experiences. Right, so life destroys us. You wrote me an email a couple of weeks back about the 40-day work week, the insanity of that. It's crippling. It's emotionally destroying. It's depressing. It's horrible. It fills us with angst and misery. We don't see our wives and our husbands enough and our children. All of this leads to sickness, you believe. You're certain.
Oh, without a doubt. You look at, I had to go up to Hammersmith for a course that I was on recently, and I got on the tube every day, and I looked at all these people. I thought, you do this every day? Are you mad? For what? For money? You do this for money? Do you not understand how the monetary system works and the scam of the money? And they've got this carrot in front of you for you to live a material life so that you can keep your material life up for money. And you're going through this every day, and you're spending what, 8, 9, 10 hours in an office with this horrible lighting that's making you sick, and then you're coming back on the train and you're putting through this
in the dark.
Of course it's making people sick, and they're so twisted, and they believe so much in this material world that it's insane. It's insanity. It's Einstein, didn't he say something like you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result? That's the notion of insanity. It's absolutely crazy, and this has all been pushed onto us. It's all been pushed onto us. We could have quite easily gone to a lot more easygoing lifestyle. I.e., you've got to produce and you've got to create. You shouldn't consume and you shouldn't use. Don't take or grab or push or force things. You give and you receive. And once you start to get that idea behind you, you're giving, like you with your radio show, you're giving, always giving information. And people are accepting that information. But what happens once they accept that information? They should be going out and doing something about it, which is what I'm doing. Going out and doing something, changing people's lives because of it. If you just consume it, you're not doing anything for anybody. All you're doing is consuming this information and sitting there and doing nothing. It's no good to anybody. You need to get that information, pass it on to other people, and be proactive and produce things. You've got to create. We are amazing creators, us as human beings, and we're not doing that. We're sitting. I was guilty of it myself. I'm sitting there, spent 5 years consuming all this information. You go, what am I doing? I all of a sudden became a victim. I mean, what you just said earlier, you said, don't be a victim, get on with the game. This is a big game. This is like a big dance, this life. And you get on with the game. Just get on with it. I know this is awful. What they're doing is absolutely awful. It is crumbling and falling apart, though. As I say, the apocalypse is amongst us. It's being unveiled. And we've got to start to push that energy right in the right direction so that this darker side of the life force energy that's kind of taken over everything, very tiny amount of people compared to the mass population. And we need to open our hearts. And the only really way of doing that is to get rid of all the garbage inside of you. You've got to get rid of it.
I want to talk about meditation in a minute, because there are questions on it. There are tweets for you now. By the way, if you're just joining us, 27.5 minutes to the top of the hour. Peter's going to stay with me till the top of the hour, till the end of the programme. It's peterpaulparker.wordpress.com. He's a Bach, I should say, flower healer practitioner. I said that wrong, didn't I? I always say that wrong.
Bach flowers, yeah.
Check him out at peterpaulparker.wordpress.com. I've known Peter since 2013, when he was a brilliant guest on the television show that I made in London. I was very impressed with the work he was doing there to try and get schools aware of the negativity of Wi-Fi and non-ionising radiation on children. And brilliant guy, lovely man, very inclusive. And this is important stuff. Right, so Chris Morell then. How you doing, Chris? Thanks for the tweet. Richie, the introduction to chi and channeling energy through the chakras in the body helped me defeat sciatica and deal with back pain. It came through an osteopath friend and an Alexander technique healer. Thanks so much for that. Chris, I appreciate that. Loads of interest in this today, genuinely. Hubertus tweets, my Tai Chi instructor helped to show me the power of Chi. Thanks for Hubertus. Presumably that's been very positive in your life there. Rich tweets, is that tapping into the bits of the brain that we don't regularly use? We'll come to that in a second. We'll talk about
that's a very important point.
Yeah, that's important, and it's kind of segues into meditation as well. David tweets, David Stanford, where does Peter reckon the best place or material is to start learning properly about our own chakra system? If you want to answer that one briefly, Peter.
Okay.
Where would you start?
What I did, I went through Ilchi Lee's program. He's got a thing called the Brain Education System, which is called educating your brain through your body. And you look at what's happened in America, there's tons and tons of controversy about him. He's had lawsuits against him and all this kind of other stuff. And if you're a victim and you go into that, it's like a very Eastern type philosophy, and it's very brutal because they're saying, no, if you can't get this, keep going. And they do it through the body. So you're actually working your body really hard as well as working your mind. And you're looking at yourself really deeply in the mirror and you go, oh my God, am I really like that? Am I really that bad? What can I do to change that? So I did it through the Ilchi Lee system, the brain education system, which he runs Kukat Qigong. He runs the body and brain centers. There's a few of them over here in the UK and America, all over the world, actually. He was the one who kind of made it so simple. It's so simple because you've got all this intellectualized ideas of the chakra system, and the chakra system is actually very simple. We could run through it very quickly if you want me to.
Do Peter, yeah, do.
So you've got the root chakra and the second chakra. You've got 7 chakras going up the center of the body. Root chakra is on the tailbone. And the second chakra is the sacral chakra, which is to do with your power, your passion, obviously your reproductive courses, your security, and also your health, the gut. We'll talk about the health and the gut connection as well. So these 2 chakras are really connected. So what tends to happen, we're stuck in these chakras because of the meme that we're born into, which is all sexualized. So you've got all this sexualization of children now, which is absolutely disgusting. They should be innocent. And you've got the sexualization of what gender are you and all this other unbelievable garbage that's going on. And you look at it, you go, whoa, they really destroyed that. And we call it the lower danjon in our practice. And then you've got the solar plexus chakra where you hold all your doubt and all your negative feelings and thoughts. And every time I get negative thoughts and feelings, I tap it really hard because it hurts at first, but you can actually clear that. And that gets rid of all the doubt. And once
how do you tap it, Peter?
Just with your fist. Just.
Is that right? Yeah.
Where
exactly? This is because I know some of our listeners will do this. Look, it's a Monday. I'm not being glib. It's a Monday. No, it's a Monday. It's tough. You know, people are listening to us now, and they have come from a job that maybe they would rather not be doing. So where? It sounded like you were giving yourself a fair old thump there. Where were you hitting exactly?
Right, just underneath the rib cage, right in the solar plexus. And when you first do it, it really hurts. But after a while, when I first started this practice, I was so stressed and so angry, I couldn't even touch my lower ribs. So they accumulated so much stress. And now it's all gone. Everything's gone. All the stress is gone by tapping. A lot of it is tapping the body. So tapping the body helps to stimulate the mitochondria. The mitochondria, when we talk about the 5G and the Wi-Fi and all this stuff, that's part of what's being attacked. And mitochondria is part of energy stimulation. So you can change your energy by tapping the body. So if you come home from work and you do like a 10-minute tapping routine, your energy will be changed.
Wow,
without
Peter.
a doubt.
So you've just given a solution to our listeners right there. It's not the entire solution. It's not going to, bring an end to everything, but it could make you feel better on a daily. I'm going to try that, to be honest. I am.
All over the body. If you look up body tapping and you get a full body tapping all over the body and count. Make sure you count out loud and count out as confidently as you can, because that takes the mind away from your thoughts and into your body. The idea is getting your mind into the body. If you can't, it's very difficult at first. So the reason we count when we do it is you're 1, 2, tapping down the arm for 10, is to get your mind into the body rather than thinking about, oh, that was a crap day, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or this or that. Your mind is everywhere, but you've got to bring the mind into the body. So tapping the body is a very, very good solution. And it's also a meditation, because people think meditation is sitting on a hill with your legs crossed and your one finger touching your thumb. No, meditation is connecting your mind and your body together. That's what it is. So tapping the body when you come home is really important. So back to the chakras, you're tapping the solar plexus to get rid of all these negative thoughts and feelings. And it takes a while. And I can't believe it now when I say I've got quite a stressful meeting, because I meet many people who are very left brain and very negative to this information. I've been into many places to talk about this. And you tap, you think, oh, they're not going to get this. So I'm tapping my solar plexus and say, well, I don't care if they're going to get it. I'm going to give them the information anyway. But once you cleared that, all that negativity, you can come up to the heart chakra. Now, your heart chakra, we call it the middle danjon, which is the seat of your love, your empathy, and your compassion. And if you go to the Heart Math Institute, they've proven physically, if you put your hands over your heart and you focus on your love, your empathy, and your compassion, that field, which is your biggest electromagnetic field of the body, will actually grow. And that's why this Wi-Fi is one of the reasons I got into looking into the Wi-Fi, because it's attacking our electromagnetic fields. And if you can grow that, then you become more empathetic and compassionate to your fellow human beings.
Is it deliberate? Is one of the reasons for the invention of things like Wi-Fi, is that the specific reason? The stated reason is it connects us all and we can get internet anywhere we want. That's the stated reason. The benevolent is the truth that the technology was designed to attack this energy field. Do you believe that?
I don't know if it's designed to attack the energy field. Probably, yes, because it's a weapon. It's a weapon. It's always been a weapon. Microwave radiation and channeling or pulsing it has always been a weapon, and they're using it for. This is what I can't believe I'm even saying this. They're using it for our communication systems, and it was a weapon. I mean, what am I saying there? Anybody listening?
Yeah, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Yeah, yeah.
And it's unbelievable. Many of these things, I look at it now, and you go, whoa. So yeah, because we're going to come up to so that's for your love, your empathy, and your compassion, which is your heart chakra. So once you go up past that chakra, you get up to your throat chakra. So, like you talked about Nigel Farage earlier, I think he's working for the banksters. But
listen, I won't deny that. I won't deny that.
But his throat chakra is open, his heart is closed. I've met him. I've met him about 2 or 3 times, and he's got very, very dark eyes. He's very consumed with something, but his throat chakra is open, which means your communication skills are very good, and mine's starting to grow more and more as I get more into this information and keep refreshing the chakra systems. So once you get past the throat chakra, you come up to the third eye chakra, which is the seat of your intuition, your wisdom, and your vision. And you start to see things differently. You can view things. And all this new age crap of looking at things and you say, well, I'm just observing this. I'm just like there's a baby being run over and I say, no, I'm just observing. No, you go and pick the baby up and you rescue the baby from a car. If a car's driving over the baby, you'll pick the baby up rather than just observing it. There's so much garbage information out there about all of this stuff. You've got to find a decent source to understand, because it's all connected, and these are connected with the enteric nervous system, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is the body-brain connection.
Yeah, just before we come to that, because that's important, and that made up part of the email you sent me. I'm glad you said that there's a lot of nonsense out there. There are a lot of charlatans out there.
Oh,
and
goodness me.
I was speaking to Max Egan on the programme last week, and we were talking about the nonsense in the independent media, which is 99% of it. Now, that's not me having a go at my alleged competitors, or it isn't, or anything like that. There's some brilliant people, and I've named them, and I'm happy to give credit where it's due. But there's a lot of stuff out there, and I believe it's to basically muddy the water. And I think when it comes to health and natural healing, I think you touched on something there as well. There is a lot of crap out there to make what is genuine and heartfelt and real look kooky. I really do. And you must come across this yourself.
Oh, unbelievable. Yes. And you see them and you get a sense. You talk about energy, you get a sense for them and you go, whoa, where are you coming from? And then after a while, it will start to come out that they're actually coming from preconceptions, and it is garbage, and they'll suck you in to make you have to go back to them time and time again for more solutions. And really, what you want to do is get people to become enlightened. Really, is if you look at Dr. David Hawkins' map of consciousness. Have you ever seen that?
No.
I'll send it over to you, and you can look at that, and it shows you what your consciousness, how you can raise your consciousness. And you've got at 200, it's like a lux, an energetic frequency. They call it 200, which is courage, which is when you first stand up and you speak out. Say, when I first stood up and met Ed Davey, the politician, and stood up and spoke about him, I hit that courage. And then all of a sudden I started to realize I had a willingness to get up and do something, which is a higher consciousness rating, where you start to get optimistic and hopeful about it. And then you start to go higher with reason and your understanding, and there's a meaning for my life. And then even higher with love, joy, and peace. You hit, like when you do your meditations, you hit bliss. You feel blissful, even though we're perceiving a world falling around us. You're still sitting there in absolute bliss, and then finally you become enlightened once you carry on working through this. And part of this is through the body and the energy body, more importantly, because the body, you need to keep the body healthy. That's really important. I've got a few things I'll throw out there before we finish.
Yeah, that's important, what you put into your body. I mean, that's the physical. I mean, you've been talking a lot about the emotional and about the spiritual, but you've got to have, you've to do that and to appreciate that. I'm guessing you've got to spend a bit of time thinking about what you're putting into your body.
I drink distilled water. I make sure I eat lots of fruit every day. We eat the big salad with our meals as well. We've gone vegan now, no longer vegetarian, we're vegan. And we do eat lots of good stuff. If you don't invest in your health, what are you investing in? What are you spending your money on? And you don't have to go crazy with it. Most of it is part of, you can get it in supermarkets. We do a little newsletter. Well, my wife actually does it. It's called Peaceful Eaters, to give people hints on what they can do to live a healthier life. And we got a few subscribers to that, and you can learn how to cook. And cooking food is a wonderful experience. You can really enjoy it. And the more energy you put into the food, the better it will taste as well. So like cooking should become a meditation, and very, very important, because you are what you eat. Your body is like it's like a magic show. You've got many, many different magical things to it. And one of those magical things is what you eat becomes your cells. And you don't want to put a genetically modified chicken in your gut, for goodness sake, because that's going to be sending information up to your brain going, what have you just eaten? Yeah. This is not good for me.
Yeah, it's a whole other subject.
It's like where if you eat a piece of fruit, they go, oh, this is good. I know what to do with this. Bang, 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 bang. And it's all sorted out very quickly. So the more distorted or ruined foods, like processed meat and stuff like that, your gullet can't deal with it. It's hitting it with all these, chucking all these enzymes onto it. And it can't deal with it. So it just pushes it down into the gut. So it sits in the gut. And most of us have got about 7 pounds of dead food just sitting in our gut. The average American, they say now, have got about 24 pounds of rotting meat in their gut because they eat so much meat.
Is that right? I heard. I used to think that was an urban legend. Yeah, 5 pounds in undigested red meat and stuff like that. It doesn't bear thinking. Peter Paul Parker is our guest. We've got about 9 minutes left today, so going to turn it back over to you, peterpaulparker.wordpress.com. Talk to us about the enteric nervous system. What is that and why is it important?
Okay, I just finished off the chakra system. We've got the crown chakra, which actually connects you to your divinity. You actually feel amazing once you do open up that chakra. The enteric nervous system is your gut. You've got the same amount of neurons in your gut as a small cat or a dog, which is where the expression gut instinct comes from. What your gut has, it produces 95% of your serotonin, which is your happiness hormone. So you keep this healthy, you stay happy. It produces about 50% of your dopamine. So your natural joy, we all have natural joy. And if we get consumed by this material world, we don't feel that joy. We feel dead and tired. So it's really important to keep that going. And we do a thing called intestine exercises, where you pull in your gut and you push out your gut. You pull in your gut as hard as you can into your backbone and push it out. And that helps to push the blood around your body, and about 30% of your blood in your body is in your gut. So with these neurons, 95% of the information actually goes up to the brain. Only 5% goes down, which helps you to push the food through your intestines. So the 95% of the information goes up to the brain, so which brings you into neuroplasticity. So if you're doing new things every day or eating new food every day, it's stimulating the brain to respond well to that. If you're eating garbage every day, say going to McDonald's or something like that, your brain will be stimulated by that by shutting down, thinking, I can't deal with this and I can't do this anymore. So that information coming up to the brain is so important. I saw a doctor who was talking about an autopsy, and he said another doctor walked past him and he said there was a problem with part of the brain. He said, yeah, that guy had something wrong with his left limb. So this other doctor thought, I'm going to check that out. And he went to his notes, and sure enough, just below his knee, his left leg had been amputated. So the information from the leg hadn't gone up to the brain to stimulate the regeneration of the brain, which is why it's important to move the body every day. The body is designed to move. Shame we haven't got a bit more time, because we could do little exercises that I could show to you what kind of Qigong or other things like that. You can even do it over the radio to show you how lighter your limbs can feel just by doing little exercises.
Yeah, well, the beauty of shows like this is we have all the time in the world in terms of we can come back again a week on Monday, next Monday or the following week, and we can dedicate some time to those exercises. I'm delighted to do that again in another program.
Yeah,
because there's a lot to take in, obviously, this hour. As it happens, I can't go over 7 o'clock this evening. Even if I could, though, it's a lot to take in. I'd rather we do that another day, to be honest, because it's fascinating.
Get your pens out. Get your listeners to get your pens out, and let's quickly talk about just cleaning up your home. So, firstly, if you can, get onto distilled or definitely purified water, or definitely filtered water. Filters aren't so good, but distilling is good, because you get rid of all the garbage in the water. You can see once you get a water distiller, all the rubbish at the bottom. And our kidneys are the best distillers on the planet. That's the cleanest water you can get is out of your kidneys. So drinking distilled water is actually very good for you. Some people again say, oh God, you can't drink that. Well, I've been drinking it for about 4 or 5 years, and I think I look pretty good for my age.
You're looking good. There's no doubt about it. I did say it earlier on. You do look very well.
Salt lamps. Now, salt, you think about going down to the sea when they used to do it in the Victorian times to breathe in the fresh air. What salt does, it helps to clean the air molecules off when you got pollution and dust on your air molecules. When we first got it, it was in the summer. We bought 2 for our front room. We were out in the garden. We've been out all day, and we came back into our front room, and we couldn't believe how clean the air felt. Now we've got salt lamps in every room of the house, and you can see from around the salt lamps that it's pulling off it attracts all the gunk, and it just drops around the salt lamps and on top of the salt lamps. So you've got to clean the salt lamps, once a month or whatever. A bit less in my case because I've got other things to do.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Shungite was used by Peter the Great. With the Russians, they realised that some of the streams that they're drinking out of were a little bit polluted, so they put shungite into the water to clean it. It's got like restorative and cleaning properties. So you need shungite. If you can get shungite, put it in your bottle of water that you go to bed with or whatever. It helps to purify and clean the water. But again, you've got to keep that clean. I use orgonite, but orgonite is very controversial. But I use orgonite to try and stop the EMFs and to harmonize the bioenergy of the body. So we got orgonite all around the body, all around the house. And also we eat a lot of fermented foods. Fermented food is very good for your gut. You can make your own. It's really easy. Or there's a place we go to called Real Remedies where you can buy a fermented bottle of like parsnips and stuff like that. It's in there, and it helps to bring in the good bacteria back into your gut. And that's about it, really. That's all I've got for now. But that's what I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, we sometimes, when I say we, I mean programs like this sometimes get accused of not offering solutions to people. I can't offer any solutions in terms of health because I don't know anything about it, and I'd be very reluctant to to venture. opinions on these subjects, but your knowledge, Peter, the thing about you is, you see, one of the great I suppose, we wouldn't say sayings, would we say proverb? Doctors should first cure themselves. Now, you don't claim to be a doctor, I know that, but you practice what it is that you talk about, and the evidence is there. You positively glow, you know. These are really interesting things, these. So yeah, we should, I'm going to give you the final word, obviously, but we should make time to do a program on this, because the response on Twitter has been huge, and you'll see it yourself if you go on Twitter a bit later on. So we would get a lot of questions. I'm happy to do 90 minutes on this real soon, where you just talk about these things that people can do, and it doesn't sound, Peter, like it's going to break anybody financially to do these things, and that's important.
All for free
free stuff, you know.
That's the best way.
But it is, but you know, there will be people on programs and gurus, and they're asking people for hundreds of pounds. Here's Peter Paul Parker saying, look, these are things that will make a very immediate impact in your life. On the meditation, some years ago, I was, again, you know, the old tough guy who knows everything, very dismissive of all that old stuff, you know.
I was the same. Yeah.
We all were, weren't we, at the beginning? but I was told by somebody whom I would have thought was a tough character, and he wasn't. And he said, Richie, lie down in a dark room, make sure it's quiet, and I want you to just lie there and imagine that you're like a cyclops, but you've got three eyes. So imagine there's an eye in the middle of your forehead. And he said, just focus on that and think about it. And I disappeared off into some mad place where it was very quiet and very peaceful, thinking about, trying to imagine I had a third eye. And afterwards he was saying, what you were doing, Richie, was a very, very basic and very simple meditation. And I had respect then. You know, I had respect. I went, yeah, well, it's obviously yet again, I've been proved wrong and I know nothing about anything. But meditation is massive, isn't it? And I don't do it, Peter. I'm not going to lie. I don't meditate these days. I don't meditate at all. And I should do. And listening to you, I'm thinking, yeah, you've got to do a bit, you know, you've got to, don't go away from these programs and, oh, Peter was brilliant, wasn't he? And then don't do this stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we got a free meditation on. I got a website called Bright Beings. It's on YouTube. Bright Beings UK, I think it is. We got a free meditation on there, which is a guided meditation, which is the easiest place to start. But meditation, there's lots of, I would say again, false information about it. It's really you focusing on yourself. That's all it is. So the most basic meditation is focusing on your breathing, and you try and sit there. And I do a thing called box breathing, where you're breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4, which is a lot of what magicians do and the occultists do anyway. And it helps to put you into the parasympathetic nervous state, which is what you want to be in. We're all in the sympathetic nervous state, which is fight or flight. We want to be back into the rest and digest. Yeah. So just a very simple breathing technique, just sitting there breathing deeply into your, we call it danjion, into your lower abdomen, and just focusing on how you feel. And all these things will pop into your head. You just observe your thoughts. You get anger. Oh, God, you know, Juncker's done this again and May's done that. And then Brexit comes in and all this other stuff comes in your head. If you follow that thought, that will go on for ages and you'll start to get into a row with it and blah, blah, blah. If you just accept it and let it float past, but keep focusing, keep coming back to your breathing, that's a meditation itself. It's as simple as that. But we do, like, based on the Tao philosophy, which is a beautiful, beautiful philosophy. It's the same, much the same as the Hindu or the Gnostics or any of these, the Zoroastrians, all of these lovely philosophies of understanding that we're just a little entity in this massive field of unknownness. We can't say we know what's past this field, but what we can do is tap into something that is much, much bigger than us. And meditation helps you to understand the vastity of it. So if you're sitting in a field and you're meditating and you open your eyes and you actually see the clouds and the field for the first time, you see the expanse of land.
Become aware.
You open your eyes. You become more aware of, wow, you know, this is awesome.
Let's say to be continued then. You and I will chat and we'll arrange soon for you to come back on to get into more of the methods and the exercises that you were going to do. In the meantime, people can go and find Peter at peterpaulparker.wordpress.com. check him out there. Flew by, mate. Covered a lot there. Really interesting stuff. You know, it's beyond interesting for me. I love listening to it. It's a great change from the misery of reporting on the news. You know, it really is. It's fabulous on a Monday. So thanks for doing it. You're always welcome here. You know that. Thanks for coming back on.
I'm always sending you energy, Richie, because I understand your role, and I know it's a very, very hard one. I think you're doing a brilliant job, and you've got to keep looking after yourself now, because it's very important what you're doing. And we as people who listen and consume this information have got to really back you up and try and keep this in place, because we need to have a voice where we can express this information and uncover all of this garbage that's going on, because it's absolutely abominable. And it just gets worse because these people are terrible. But we shouldn't be angry towards them, because that just feeds them. We should be looking at them and feeling sorry for them and trying to say, what are you doing? And we need to start to come together as a society in some way without it being contrived or controlled by somebody at the centre, because that always goes wrong. Somebody's always going to have more money, more infiltration, and these are the same things that we've had all the way through. So
that's the music.
Up.
We're out. Hey, that was brilliant, Peter. Can't wait to speak again. Thanks, mate. PeterPaulParker.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.